It's late. Maybe you're lying in bed, watching the soft glow of your screen in a darkened room. The world around you is quiet, the air still. Maybe you're winding down after a long day, looking for something to calm your mind. But tonight, something else is about to unfold. Something stranger than sleep, deeper than dreams. Let me ask you something that most people avoid. When the body stops breathing and the heart falls silent, where do you go? Not your name, not your history, but that quiet presence behind your eyes, that voice in your head, that you've probably been told that death is final, that it's a switch on, then off. Simple as that. But what if that's wrong? What if science is starting to reveal something more? Something we've been too afraid to ask for too long. Welcome to Sleepy Science Lab. I'm glad you're here. This is a quiet place for curious minds, a gentle space where science and mystery meet. My name is Wahaj, and tonight we're going to walk right up to the edge of everything we think we know, and maybe, just maybe, take a peek beyond it. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how far this little corner of curiosity reaches. Now, I want you to imagine something, a true story. In 2013, a man named Joe was declared clinically dead after a massive heart attack. No pulse, no breathing, flatline medical staff rushed to bring him back, but for 3 minutes. There was no activity in his heart, nothing. But then, something strange happened. When Joe was revived, he was calm, too calm. He looked around the room, and the first thing he said sent chills down everyone's spine. He said, "I saw myself. I saw the nurses. I heard every word. I wasn't in my body." Now, you might think this is just another story, maybe the brain playing tricks. But Joe described exact details that happened while he was clinically dead, things he couldn't have seen or heard, down to the color of the pen in a nurse's pocket, the song playing on the overhead speaker, the moment someone dropped a pair of scissors. He shouldn't have known any of it, but he did. And here's the part that no one has ever explained. Just before he came back, Joe said he heard a voice. Not in English, not in words. It was more like a feeling, a question. And that question changed everything he thought he knew. He's never shared what the voice said. Not with his doctors, not with his family, not even on the record. Just one sentence that made him cry without knowing why. Now, here's the thing. Joe is not alone. In hospitals across the world, people have reported similar things. Conscious awareness after the brain is supposedly off. But how is that possible? We'll get to that. But first, let's take a step back and ask the real question. What is consciousness? What is this thing we call you? Is it a product of the brain? A spark of biology? Or could it be something more? And if it is more, then where does it go? When the body shuts down, science is starting to map the edges of this mystery. And what it's finding doesn't look like an end. It looks like a doorway. Over the next few minutes, we're going to travel through history, neuroscience, physics, and philosophy. We'll talk about what dying looks like from the inside, what the brain does in the moments after death, and what might happen after that. But I'll warn you, some of what you'll hear is unsettling. Some of it might change how you look at life itself, and some of it, well, we still don't have words for it. Because here's the truth. Your body will die someday. But the mystery of where you go, that might be even bigger than life itself. So get comfortable, breathe deep, let your mind soften a little. Tonight, we're not chasing sleep, following something deeper. And just before we reach the heart of this story, I'll tell you what researchers found in one of the most advanced brain scans ever taken during the final moments of life. What they saw made them question everything they believed about death, but we'll get there. One step at a time. Stay with me. Let's rewind a little. Before we can talk about where you might go after death, we need to understand where you are right now. That voice in your head, the feeling that you're awake, the awareness that you're here, listening, even as your body rests quietly. That is consciousness. But what is consciousness, really? Is it something your brain creates? Or is it something your brain receives? For centuries, philosophers and scientists have tried to answer this question. And what's strange is that even now, in all our modern brilliance, the question still puzzles the smartest minds on Earth. Let's go back to one of the earliest turning points in this story. In 1637, a philosopher named René Descartes sat alone in a cold room in France and asked the question that still echoes through every consciousness study today. What if nothing is real? What if his senses were lying? What if everything he thought he knew could be a dream? But then a thought hit him like lightning. If I am questioning, then I must exist. He called it the one truth you can't argue with. I think, therefore I am. From that moment forward, science began dividing the world into two things: the physical body and the conscious self. The body follows rules. The self, we're still not sure. Now fast forward nearly 400 years, we have satellites in orbit, computers that think we've mapped the human genome, but we still don't know how the brain creates you. We do know this: the brain is a tangled forest of around 86 billion neurons. They fire signals using tiny bursts of electricity. These signals form patterns. Those patterns create thoughts. At least, that's what we think. But here's where it gets weird. You can remove parts of the brain. You can change a person's memories, their movements, their emotions, but no scientist has ever found the exact place where you live. No one has located the soul. No one has pinned down the self. And that mystery becomes even more fascinating when we look at what happens during death. When the heart stops, the body doesn't shut off instantly. The cells in your brain don't die right away. In fact, some parts of the brain actually light up, and not just a little. In some cases, brain waves spike even higher than when you're awake. It's like the brain puts on one last show, a storm of activity, and no one really knows why. Some scientists believe it's just a cascade, the brain reacting to oxygen loss. Others think it's something more. Now, I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself lying in a hospital room. The beeping monitors fade. The lights dim. You take your final breath, and in that exact moment, your brain does something unexpected. It starts firing, not in chaos, but in rhythm. Waves of energy ripple across the brain, lighting up regions tied to memory, vision, and emotion. It's as if the brain is replaying something, or preparing for something. Scientists at the University of Michigan found this exact pattern in a group of rats after cardiac arrest. Their brains surged with high-frequency gamma waves associated with conscious thought, even after their hearts had stopped. In 2023, doctors at NYU Langone studied humans during cardiac arrest and saw the same thing. Spikes of awareness, as if something inside them refused to shut down. This brings us to a chilling possibility. What if consciousness doesn't vanish the moment your heart stops? What if it lingers, even briefly. If you're hearing this, you might be feeling a quiet sense of awe or unease. And that's okay, because we're now standing at the edge of what we know. To understand what comes after life, we need to understand what life really is. And we're not just talking about biology, we're talking about awareness, attention, the feeling of being. Think about dreams every night. Your body lies still, but your mind creates entire worlds. In dreams, time bends, faces appear and vanish. You are alive, but not in the physical world. Now consider this. What if death is not unlike dreaming? Some researchers believe that what we call consciousness might actually be a field, like gravity, something our brains tune into, not something we create. This is called the receiver model. In this view, your brain is like a radio. It picks up a frequency. That frequency is you. So when the radio breaks, the signal doesn't stop. It just stops being played here. Of course, this is still theory, but it's being taken more seriously as the limits of neuroscience become clearer. Let's explore an analogy. Imagine you are at a movie theater. The lights are low. The screen glows. You're watching a film that feels so real you forget where you are. Then, slowly, the projector starts to shut down. The picture flickers. The sound fades until everything goes black. Now here's the question. Did the story end? Or did the projector just stop showing it? In many spiritual traditions, death is not considered a stop. It's a transition, a continuation, a shift in awareness. Modern science hasn't proven this, but it hasn't disproven it either. What we do know is that the human brain, in its final moments, behaves in a way that suggests something far more complex than a simple shutdown. And here's another mystery. People who have come back from near-death experiences often report feelings of clarity, peace, and overwhelming presence, as if they were more alive than ever. Some see tunnels of light. Others hear voices. Many feel as though they were floating above their own bodies, looking down. Are these just dreams, hallucinations, or is the brain showing us something? As we move forward in this journey, we'll explore these questions through science, history, and stories that challenge everything we assume. But first, I want you to take a moment. Feel your breath, notice your thoughts as they come and go. Try to locate the you who is listening. You may find it's not as simple as pointing to a spot in your head, because what makes you you might be deeper than anything we've measured so far. And just as a sunset seems to disappear, only to rise again somewhere else, maybe the same is true for consciousness. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at how death actually happens inside the body, not as a sudden stop, but as a series of fading signals, chemical changes, and surprising moments of beauty. But be warned, one of those moments might hold the key to what happens next, and it's something most people don't know even exists. Let's step inside, not into a room or a memory, but inside the machinery of your own mind. Right now, your brain is alive with electric fire. Each second, billions of neurons send signals across tiny gaps called synapses. It's like a storm, silent but powerful, crackling with everything you are. Your voice, your memories, your fear of falling, your love of the ocean, your sense of self. All of it is woven into this invisible electrical dance. But how does it work? And more importantly, what happens when it stops? Most people imagine death as a switch. 1 second you're here, then suddenly nothing. But biology doesn't work like that. Death isn't a moment, it's a process. And that process begins with a single failing system. Let's say the heart stops. Blood flow ceases. Oxygen levels begin to fall. Within seconds, your brain notices, and it responds. Not with silence, but with a burst of activity. That's the first surprise. The dying brain doesn't shut down, it fights. Scientists used to believe that the brain simply faded into unconsciousness as oxygen ran out. But in a groundbreaking study, researchers discovered that the opposite can happen. Moments after cardiac arrest, patients showed sudden spikes in gamma brainwaves. These are the same waves linked to high-level awareness, perception, and memory. Why would a dying brain become more alert? Some believe it's a defense mechanism, a last-ditch attempt to reboot. Others suggest it's something deeper, that the brain, in its final act, opens a door we rarely glimpse, until it's too late. Let's break it down. When the brain detects a loss of oxygen, it releases a flood of neurotransmitters. Think of it like an emergency flare. These chemicals surge across the brain, triggering areas related to vision, emotion, and long-term memory. It's not random, it's organized, structured, like the mind is replaying the story of its own life. And here's the strange part. Many people who survive clinical death describe the same thing: a rush of memories, a floating sensation, a tunnel of light. Some even describe watching their own body from above, all while their heart had stopped. Is this a hallucination, a trick of the dying mind? Or is it a window into something we don't yet understand? Let's take a closer look. Your brain operates in rhythms. Alpha waves when you're calm, beta waves when you focus, delta waves during deep sleep. But gamma waves, those are rare, and in death, they surge like a storm. One study found that patients had synchronized gamma bursts between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, even minutes after their heart had stopped. That level of coordination doesn't just happen. It's the mark of active consciousness. Imagine your brain as a concert hall. Every region plays its own part. The visual cortex handles sight. The hippocampus stores memories. The amygdala processes fear. During death, it's as if all these instruments rise into a final crescendo, a last symphony of self. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. What if we pause that moment, right in the middle of this internal storm? What do we find? We find a brain that looks alive, not in body, but in thought. Cells are still firing, images still flash. The self may still be active, but it's unconnected to the body, floating in the dark. Let's shift perspective. Imagine if this process stopped for just 1 second. Imagine that surge of gamma waves was interrupted. You might lose the entire final experience. But if it continues, even briefly, it could explain the vivid clarity people report when they return. That feeling of being somewhere else, outside of time, outside of fear. Now let me tell you a story. In 2011, a woman named Anna went into cardiac arrest during surgery. Her heart stopped for 7 minutes. She was revived. When she woke, she calmly described the operating room, the color of the surgeon's gloves, and a song that was playing during the procedure. But the doctors were sure she had been unconscious. Her brain activity was flat. Her eyes were taped shut. So how did she know? When asked, Anna simply said, "I was still me. I just wasn't there." That single sentence changed everything for her doctors, and it raised a question they couldn't answer. How do we define consciousness if it can exist without the usual signals? Now, some scientists argue that these experiences are just dying neurons firing randomly, but the organized patterns suggest otherwise. And when these experiences are reported across age, culture, and belief systems, something begins to feel familiar. Too familiar to ignore. Here's another angle. Your sense of self comes from a network called the default mode network. It's what lights up when your mind wanders or reflects on itself. During deep meditation or psychedelics, this network shifts. Some call it ego. Death, a moment where the self dissolves. During death, the same network may activate in a strange, final way. A letting go, a shift from individual to universal. It's only a theory, but it matches the language of those who return. They often describe a feeling of unity, of returning to something vast and peaceful. Now, let's go even deeper. The brain uses energy from glucose and oxygen. When oxygen drops, the cells begin to starve. But just before they shut down, they release a massive wave of depolarization. It's like a last electrical breath. It spreads from the back of the brain to the front, and in that moment, consciousness may slip from its anchor. What happens after that? We don't know, but that wave, called terminal spreading depolarization, might be the scientific fingerprint of the moment. The self detaches. Some researchers believe this wave could be the physical basis of near-death experiences. It creates a moment of internal light, a final image, a vivid journey through memory and emotion. But if the brain can no longer record, then these experiences may drift away, never remembered, unless the person returns. So maybe what we're seeing in these stories isn't imagination. Maybe it's the tip of something real, something just out of reach. As we continue, we'll explore what these signals mean and how they might connect to other systems in your body. Because death is not a solo act. It's a sequence, and every part of you plays a role. But for now, I'll leave you with a thought. If your brain can remain active, aware, and even unified after the heart stops, then maybe the moment of death is not an end at all. Maybe it's a transfer. Maybe the signal continues. Maybe the you behind your eyes doesn't vanish, but moves on. In the next section, we'll explore how that movement connects to other parts of the body and the universe itself. From the smallest molecules to the largest cosmic patterns, we'll see how your consciousness might be part of something much bigger than you imagined. And once you see the scale, you may never look at yourself the same way again. Let's zoom out, far out, from the electrical storms inside your skull, past your heartbeat and breath, beyond the outline of your body. Where does your consciousness fit in the grand scale of everything? If we want to understand where you go, we need to understand what you're made of and where you begin and end. Start with this. You are made of about 37 trillion cells, each one alive in its own way. Inside those cells are molecules that stretch back billions of years. Some of the hydrogen atoms in your body were formed during the Big Bang. You are, quite literally, ancient. But your consciousness, that's something else. It doesn't weigh anything. You can't see it, but it moves mountains inside your mind. Now imagine shrinking down to the size of a single neuron. It's smaller than a grain of sand, but it can hold memories, fears, dreams. A single neuron connects to up to 10,000 other neurons, and those connections form your thoughts, your voice, your sense of time. But zoom out again. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds. It fits in your hands, but the patterns inside it are more complex than the Milky Way. No exaggeration. Scientists say the brain has more possible connection patterns than there are atoms in the known universe. You are a galaxy made of thoughts. So how does this relate to death? When the body begins to shut down, it's not just the brain that changes. Your entire system responds. Hormones shift. Cells begin to prepare for release. Some researchers believe the body is wired for a graceful exit, not just a collapse. And here's the key. Everything is connected. Your nervous system talks to your heart. Your gut sends signals to your brain. Your immune system can influence your mood. You are not a single machine. You're a network. Now think about this. If your body is a system of systems, could your consciousness also be connected to something larger? Some scientists are exploring the idea that consciousness may not be confined to the brain, that the mind might extend into the body, into the space around it. Some call this the embodied mind theory. Others believe it goes even further, into quantum fields, into universal patterns. Let's take a different angle. Look at nature. A tree dies, but its roots feed the soil. That soil grows new life. The pattern continues. The system adapts. Nothing is truly lost. Now think of the body. When you die, your cells break down, but the molecules remain. The atoms stay. The energy transforms. So what happens to the energy of consciousness? Some physicists argue that energy can never be destroyed. It only changes form. So if consciousness has an energetic signature, maybe it continues. Maybe it connects. Let's bring it closer. Your brain produces measurable electromagnetic fields. These fields extend outside your head, small but real. Your thoughts may not be locked in your skull. They may ripple outward, and if those fields interact with other systems, then maybe your consciousness is part of something bigger, something shared. Now here's where the scale becomes haunting. Across cultures and time, people have described similar experiences during near-death events. A feeling of unity, a sense of becoming one with everything. These are not isolated reports. They come from different continents, belief systems, and ages. And they describe the same thing, a connection. Scientists call it non-local consciousness. The idea that your awareness might not be locked in one place. It might be part of a web, something that spans beyond your body. It's not proven, but it's being explored, and it matches what we're learning from brain science, that the self is not a fixed point. It's a pattern, a process, a dance between systems. Let's imagine something. Imagine you are water, clear, cool, still. That water is held in a glass. The glass is your body. When the glass breaks, the water doesn't disappear. It spills, it moves, it finds new forms. Maybe the self is like that, and maybe death is the moment the glass breaks. Now think about the way your thoughts ripple into the world. The people you've loved, the stories you've told, the energy you've shared, that doesn't vanish. It moves outward. It shapes others. Some scientists argue that consciousness may be deeply tied to information, and information, like energy, can be stored, transferred, transformed, never truly erased. So if you are a pattern of information, maybe you don't end. You change. Here's something else. Inside your brain, there's a group of neurons called the colostrum. Some researchers think it might act like a conductor, synchronizing different brain regions into a unified sense of self. It may be the part that gives you the feeling of I am, but even if the colostrum stops, what happens to the pattern it held? That's the mystery. It's like a song. The instrument may fall silent, but the song remains, in memory, in vibration, in trace. We are only beginning to understand how the body, brain, and consciousness connect to each other and the world. But what's clear is this: you are not isolated. You are woven into the fabric of nature, and when you die, that thread may not snap. It may simply be pulled into a larger pattern. In the next section, we'll travel through history, from ancient beliefs to modern breakthroughs. You'll see how humans have chased this question for thousands of years, and how science is beginning to uncover what the ancients may have sensed all along: a pattern, a continuation, a doorway. Since the beginning of time, humans have asked the same question: what happens after we die? And more importantly, what happens to the part of us that thinks, dreams, wonders, the self, the soul, the I am? Let's go back thousands of years. In ancient Egypt, death was not the end, it was a journey. The soul was believed to leave the body and pass through trials. If it was found pure, it would join the eternal. If not, it would vanish. They even measured the soul against a feather. Too heavy with regret, and it would be devoured. Too light, and it would rise. In India, texts spoke of the Atman, the eternal self, something that moves from life to life, like a flame passed from candle to candle. Consciousness was not trapped in one form. It was infinite. The Greeks had their own view. Plato believed that the body was just a shadow of the soul's true home, that the soul existed before birth and continued after death. He called the body a prison, and death, the release, don't now move forward in time. In the 1600s, scientists began to separate the soul from science. The body became a machine, the brain a device. Consciousness was declared an illusion, something that just feels real. But not everyone agreed. In the late 1800s, a man named William James studied the mind. He suggested that consciousness might not be produced by the brain at all, that the brain might be more like a filter, letting some awareness in and keeping other parts out. He called it the transmissive theory, and it never fully went away. Then came the 20th century. Machines could now measure brainwaves. Neuroscience was born. Scientists could see consciousness light up in electric patterns. They began to define states: awake, asleep, dreaming, anesthetized. But even then, no one could find the place where the self lived. They looked in the cortex, the limbic system, the brainstem, but every part, while essential, was incomplete, like trying to find a song by examining the piano keys. In the 1970s, a surgeon named Dr. Lloyd Rudy performed heart surgeries with a new technique. During one operation, a patient flatlined, but came back, not only alive, but with clear memories. He described conversations, instruments, and a light he felt drawn toward. Rudy didn't dismiss it. He took notes, and over the years, more cases followed. By the 1990s, near-death experiences became a focus of scientific study. Researchers like Dr. Pim van Lammel in the Netherlands began documenting survivors of clinical death. Many had detailed recollections, feelings of peace, expanded awareness, observations that were later verified. One man described floating above the room and watching the medical team try to revive him. He saw a nurse drop a metal tray. He described the sound, the motion, He had no heartbeat at the time, yet he remembered it all. This forced scientists to reconsider. Maybe consciousness doesn't vanish the moment the heart stops. Maybe it lingers. Or maybe it separates. Recent studies using advanced EEG and fMRI scans have pushed this even further. In 2022, a groundbreaking paper recorded brain activity in a man just before and after death. Surprisingly, his brain showed organized gamma waves. These are waves tied to memory, recall, and consciousness. He was clinically dying, yet the mind was not still. Now here's the contradiction. If we measured death by lack of heartbeat and breathing, but the brain still shows awareness, when does the self truly leave? That's the question scientists are now wrestling with. Some argue for a new definition of death, not based on the body, but on consciousness. And this brings us full circle. Ancient cultures may not have had machines, but they had stories, patterns, symbols. They spoke of tunnels, lights, and presence. Modern survivors say the same. Could it be that science is now rediscovering what ancient people already sensed? That the self is not the body, that it can leave and return? We don't know yet, but the evidence is growing, and the more we study it, the more the line between life and death begins to blur. In the next section, we'll dive deep into that uncertainty, into the mysteries science still can't solve, and one of them may hold the most important clue about where you actually go. We've come far. We've looked at neurons, ancient texts, brainwaves, and death itself. But now we stand in front of the question no one can fully answer. What exactly is consciousness? And why does it seem to continue, even when everything else stops? Let's be clear. No one has ever found a consciousness molecule, or a single part of the brain that holds the self. Scientists have mapped regions for vision, touch, language, but the you behind your eyes, it doesn't sit in one spot. It moves, it watches. Some believe that's because it isn't local, that consciousness might not live in the brain at all, that it may be a field, like gravity, like light. This is where science meets the edge. Quantum physicists have proposed that consciousness could be linked to quantum fields, small, invisible structures that extend beyond the body. They move in and out of time, in and out of space. Sounds like science fiction, but it's being studied. Now picture this. Imagine a glass of water. You drop a stone, in ripples spread out. The stone sinks, but the waves continue. The impact remains. Some scientists believe that your life may be like that. The body fades, but the ripples of your awareness continue, in space, in memory. In others, we don't have proof, but we do have clues. One of the biggest mysteries lies in shared death. Experiences. These are events where someone near the dying person feels something too. They report visions, sounds, even seeing the dying person's life flash before their eyes. How is that possible? There's no known biological reason, but it keeps happening. Another mystery is terminal lucidity. This is when a dying person suddenly becomes alert, clear, awake, even if they had dementia or were unconscious for days. Families have seen loved ones speak clearly, say final words, recognize people, then pass. Doctors can't explain it. It doesn't fit the timeline of brain decay, but it happens, and it hints at something larger. Maybe consciousness is not a slow dimming. Maybe it returns one final time. Now let's slow down. You are lying on a soft surface, eyes closed. The world is fading, but inside, a light flickers. It's not painful, it's peaceful. You feel warmth, then weightlessness, like floating in water or drifting in sleep. This is how many describe the moment before death, not terror, but calm. Some say it's like being carried. Others say it feels like going home. What if that's not metaphor? What if the transition of consciousness is real, not as an illusion, but as a passage? This is where science still struggles. Because you can't measure the soul, you can only watch the effects. Brain, activity, stories, peace. But these effects don't point to nothing. They point to something. Something we haven't named yet. And maybe we don't need to. Maybe the experience itself is the answer. But there's one more mystery. A very old one. People who've had near-death experiences often say the same thing, that they were asked a question. Not in words, but in feeling. The question was simple, but powerful. And when they returned, they couldn't unhear it. They couldn't forget. Some said it was like their entire life was being weighed, not judged, but understood. One man said it was like his soul was being asked a single thing. Did you live with love? Now pause there. That question, that feeling, that presence, it appears again and again across cultures, languages, religions, even in people who don't believe. So maybe, just maybe, that question is not a dream. Maybe it's part of the shift, a moment where consciousness reaches something else, something higher or deeper. And if that's true, then the journey of the self may not end in darkness. It may begin in light. In the next section, we'll come back to Earth. We'll talk about what this knowledge means for our daily lives and how understanding death might just teach us how to live. If consciousness might continue after death. If awareness isn't tied only to your heartbeat, then how should that change the way you live right now? This isn't just a thought experiment. It's practical, because the more we understand the nature of the self, the more we begin to realize how fragile and miraculous our awareness really is. Let's start simple. Breath. It's the first thing you do when you're born, the last thing you do before you die. And yet most of us never pay attention to it. But here's the strange part. Your breath is one of the only things that links your body to your awareness. When you focus on it, your brain changes. Heart rate slows. Brainwaves shift. You move into calm states. Some scientists believe breath might be one of the tools that help regulate consciousness itself. Think of it like tuning the signal. Now add meditation. In deep meditative states, brain scans show reduced activity in the default mode network. That's the same network that gives you a sense of ego, of being separate. When it quiets, people report a sense of oneness. Time fades. The body disappears. It sounds a lot like near-death experiences. Peace, light, unity. So maybe these practices aren't just good for stress. Maybe they prepare the mind for something bigger. Then there's sleep. Every night you disappear from the outside world. Your body goes limp. Your awareness fades. But something inside you continues. You dream, you experience, you return. Sleep is the closest thing we have to death that happens daily. And every morning, you wake again. Maybe that's no accident. Maybe sleep is training. There's also the way we treat our body. If consciousness is deeply tied to the brain and its function, then what you eat, how you move, how you rest it, all matters. Omega-3 cells support neuron membranes. Movement increases oxygen. Rest restores systems. Taking care of your body might mean strengthening the vessel that holds the signal. But let's go further. If consciousness is not just personal, but connected, then how you treat others matters too. Your emotions ripple, your thoughts carry weight. When you offer kindness, you change the chemical state of another brain. When you harm, you do the same. That's not poetry, that's neuroscience. And if your energy connects beyond your body, then what you carry inside you reaches further than you think. Gratitude, forgiveness, love, these aren't soft ideas, they're frequencies. They're states that shift your brain and body, and maybe they shift something deeper. So what can you do? You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to meditate for hours. But start noticing. When you wake up, pause, feel your breath. Ask yourself what kind of energy you're carrying. When you speak to someone, notice your tone. Are you lifting or draining? At night, slow down, reflect. Your brain stores memories more deeply during calm. Maybe the final moments of life replay the clearest ones. So make them worth replaying. Even your thoughts matter. Neuroplasticity shows us that thoughts shape the brain. The more you focus on fear, the more your brain wires for it. The more you focus on joy, the stronger those paths become. You are sculpting the landscape of your inner world every moment. That world might continue beyond this one, so build it with care. There's also music. Music stimulates nearly every part of the brain. It moves emotion. It stores memory. People with late-stage dementia can still recognize songs from childhood. That means something. Sound may go deeper than thought. Some near-death reports mention hearing music. So what are you surrounding yourself with? And finally, presence. Being truly aware in this moment. It's rare. We're distracted, split, half alive. But presence is the practice of returning. Feeling your feet on the ground. Noticing the way your chest rises. Looking someone in the eye when they speak. These things bring you home to yourself. And if the self is more than neurons, then maybe presence is the doorway. Now let me tell you a story. A man named Elias had a stroke in his early 50s. He lost speech, movement, memory. Doctors said he'd never recover. But slowly, with mindfulness and breath work, something shifted. He didn't regain his old self. He found a new one. And when asked what he had learned from being so close to the edge, he said this: "I am not my voice. I am not my hands. I am the watcher behind them." That statement stayed with me, because it captures what so many of these stories share. That who you are is deeper than your job, your past, your words. You are the awareness, the witness. And you can strengthen that witness every single day. So what does this all mean? It means death is not just an end, it's a teacher, and if you let it, it can show you how to live, with intention, with attention, with awe. In the next section, we'll zoom out again. We'll look at how your life fits into nature, the cosmos, evolution. Because the more we learn about the universe, the more it starts to look like a mirror. And maybe, just maybe, it's been reflecting you all along. Step outside yourself for a moment. Forget your name, your story, your body. Imagine floating above Earth, looking down at the blue marble spinning slowly in space. Cities glowing, oceans breathing, clouds drifting like thoughts. Somewhere on that planet, you were born, and someday you will die. But what if that's not the whole story? What if who you are connects to something much older, much larger? Let's talk about patterns. The human brain is filled with them. Waves, rhythms, cycles. So is nature, day and night. Tides rising and falling. stars being born and collapsing into black holes. From the tiniest particle to the largest galaxy, the universe moves in cycles, and life fits that pattern perfectly. You are born, you grow, you fade. But even after death, your atoms remain. They dissolve into soil, air, water. They join the dance again. That alone is powerful, but consciousness adds another layer. Because consciousness doesn't seem to follow physical laws. It's not limited by mass or charge. It doesn't decay like cells. It's something else, and here's where it gets strange. Across all living systems, we find signs of awareness. Not just in humans, but in animals, even in plants. Trees can warn each other of danger. Fungi can communicate through underground networks. Octopuses have multiple brains and problem-solving abilities. Life seems to express intelligence everywhere we look. And if consciousness is part of life, maybe it isn't unique to humans. Maybe it's fundamental. Some scientists propose that consciousness is a basic property of the universe, like space or time, a field that everything participates in, and the human brain, a receiver, a lens, a translator. That means when your brain is active, it's not generating awareness, it's tuning into it. And when your brain stops, the awareness may still be there. You just stop perceiving it in this form. Now look at evolution. Over billions of years, life has become more complex, from single cells to nervous systems to reflective thought. Consciousness seems to be deepening, not random, growing, not fading. What if death isn't an end point, but a point of transition in that evolution? Cosmic patterns support this. Stars explode and create elements like carbon and iron. Those elements form planets. Planets support life. Life becomes conscious. Consciousness asks about stars. The cycle completes itself. You are part of that cycle, born from stardust, reflecting on stardust, and the implications are enormous. If your consciousness is part of a universal process, then life and death are not opposites. They are partners. And who you are may be more than a biological event. You may be a moment of the universe noticing itself. Some call this the observer effect. In quantum physics, particles behave differently when observed, which means that awareness itself changes reality. Consciousness may not just watch the universe, it may shape it. So when you die and your personal awareness fades from the body, maybe it returns to that larger field, the field that holds all thoughts, all memories, all light. And if that's true, then we are never alone. We are expressions of something timeless. You, me, every living thing, drops from the same ocean. Now let's go deeper. In ancient times, shamans and mystics spoke of the veil, a thin line between this world and the next, between waking and dreaming, life and death. Science has always searched for the veil, in molecules, in waves, in patterns, and slowly it's starting to appear, not as a wall, but as a shimmer. We see it in near-death experiences, in shared moments of clarity, in the peace that settles. In a room right after someone dies, something shifts, something unseen. It doesn't prove what's beyond, but it suggests there's more, and that more might be woven into everything, into the stars that burn, into the tides that move, into your very breath. So how should we live knowing this? With gentleness, with awe, with humility. You are not separate from the world. You are made of it. You are its story, told for a brief moment through the lens of your life. And when that moment ends, the story continues, not as a copy, but as a new chapter. In the next section, we'll look at the front lines of this discovery, what modern research is doing right now to uncover the truth behind consciousness, and what the future might reveal about where you go when the lights go out. Right now, across the world, scientists are running experiments that would have sounded impossible just a decade ago. Brain scans that can capture consciousness fading in real time. Computers that can read thoughts. Studies on near-death experiences that challenge everything we thought we knew. We are standing at the edge of something, and what comes next may redefine what it means to live, die, and be aware at all. Let's start with one of the most ambitious projects in the world, the Human Brain Project. Using artificial intelligence and massive computing power, researchers are building the simulation of the human brain, not just its structure, but its behavior. The goal is to understand how consciousness emerges from networks of neurons. But here's what they're finding. Even with all the data, all the models, they can't replicate awareness. They can mimic it, predict it, but they can't create it. Something is still missing. At the same time, neurologists are studying coma patients with advanced fMRI. These patients are non-responsive, but their brain scans show moments of clarity, bursts of recognition, flashes of self-awareness. One man, believed to be unconscious for 12 years, was able to communicate using his brain scan. He wasn't gone, just trapped. That discovery changed medicine forever, because it showed that consciousness can survive in silence, invisible but real. Then there are near-death studies. Institutions like NYU and the University of Southampton are collecting hundreds of verified cases. People who were clinically dead but returned with memories, emotions, and experiences that match across cultures and beliefs. These are not vague dreams. They include accurate details of events that occurred while the brain was flatlined, verified by medical staff. It's led some researchers to consider that consciousness may be not identical, that it exists independently of the physical brain. A radical idea, but one gaining traction. And then there's quantum consciousness, a theory that tiny structures inside neurons called microtubules may operate at the quantum level. This would mean consciousness is not just a chemical process, it's a quantum event. And if that's true, it could exist outside time and space. It could explain why some people feel they've lived lifetimes in moments during near-death events. Time stretches, space collapses, and the self continues. What does this mean for the future? It means we may one day map the self, not just brain states, but awareness itself. It means we might build machines that can interface with consciousness, not simulate it, connect with it. Neuralink and similar projects are already experimenting with direct brain-computer interfaces. The idea is that one day, your memories, your thoughts, your awareness could be uploaded, not in science fiction, in reality. But here's the big question. If you upload your mind, is it still you or just a copy? That question haunts researchers, because it forces us to define what you really means. Is it your memories, your voice, or something deeper, something that can't be copied, only carried? Now, imagine this, a future where we can preserve brain function after death, where people who die can be revived hours later. Already, emergency doctors are experimenting with suspended animation, cooling the body to slow death, buying time, saving life. What happens when we can pause death, when the line between life and afterlife becomes flexible? There's also growing interest in consciousness beyond the brain. Researchers are looking at the heart's electromagnetic field, at gut-brain interactions, at collective consciousness in groups. These studies suggest that awareness may be more distributed than we thought, that the mind is not locked in the skull. Finally, scientists are asking bold questions. Could consciousness survive without the body? Could it transfer? Could it evolve? Right now, those are still theories, but they're being tested, and every new study brings more surprises. One recent discovery showed brain activity surging minutes after death in patients across multiple hospitals. These weren't random waves, they were structured, as if the mind had something left to do, something to complete. And then it was gone. But what if it wasn't? What if the research we're doing now is just the beginning? In the next section, we'll slow down, step back, reflect on what all of this means. Because even in a world filled with data and discovery, the biggest question remains: what does this mean for you? You've made it this far. You've traveled through science, history, death, light, and time. You've heard stories that shake the limits of reason. You've seen that consciousness might be more than neurons, more than breath, maybe even more than this body. But now it's time to pause, to turn inward, to ask the question behind all questions: what does this mean for you? Because knowledge without reflection is noise, but knowledge with reflection becomes wisdom. So let's reflect. You are alive right now. You are hearing these words, not just with your ears, but with your attention, your focus, that quiet presence inside you that notices everything. That is the part we've been talking about this whole time, the real you. And if that part is deeper than your body, then death isn't the opposite of life. It's the completion of a pattern, a turning of a page, not the end, just a different chapter. This realization can change how you live. When you see that your time here is short, but not final, you begin to value it more. Moments feel richer, emotions feel sharper, even pain starts to feel like a signal, not a punishment. It can also change how you love, because if every soul is a ripple in the same ocean, then love is not attachment, it's recognition. It's remembering that we are not alone, that no one truly disappears. They transform. Grief still hurts, but it hurts differently. It becomes quieter, not a wound, but a longing, a whisper that says, I will see you again, somehow, somewhere. Let's take a moment to slow down. Close your eyes, breathe, feel your body as it is, the weight of it, the warmth of it. Now ask yourself, who is feeling this? Who is aware of this moment? That is the mystery. It cannot be named, but it can be felt. And when you recognize it, life changes. You become less afraid, less distracted, more present, because you are living with the awareness that every breath is a gift, and every goodbye might not be final now. Let me share a story. A woman named Diane lost her husband to cancer. For months, she was broken. Then one night, she dreamed of him. He didn't speak. He just stood by the door, smiling, calm. When she woke, she felt peace. Not because she believed in ghosts, but because the part of her that loved him was still alive, inside her, and always would be. That's the truth science can't measure. The feeling that love doesn't die, that connection doesn't fade, that the self doesn't end. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need all the answers. Maybe the mystery is part of the meaning. In the next section, we'll connect everything, tie the threads, and look at the bigger picture. Because the more you understand how all of this fits together, the more it starts to feel like a single, beautiful design. You have explored neurons firing in a final storm, ancient beliefs of souls in transit, modern scans that catch a flicker behind closed eyes, and the strange possibility that awareness is as large as space itself. Now draw the threads together. Imagine spinning in place and seeing every insight wrap around you like a quiet spiral. The basic story is simple. Life builds structure. Structure supports consciousness. Consciousness looks back at life and asks why. When the body fades, the structure returns to dust. But the asking may continue because the field that carries questions is larger than any brain. Think of a river. Each drop travels from sky to ground to sea. The river never dies, it shifts form. Your awareness may be the same. Birth is condensation, death is release. The river of mind joins a wider current. Science calls it non-local. Information, philosophers call it universal mind. Poets call it home. Whatever name you choose, the pattern is clear. When we study the smallest cell, we find echoes of galaxies. When we watch a star explode, we see the raw ingredients of memory. There is no sharp border between inner and outer. Every beat of your heart moves iron that was forged in stellar cores. Every surge of thought rides electrical charges that obey. Cosmic law. This is the integration point. Body, mind, world, and cosmos are one story told at different scales. Once you grasp this unity, fear begins to soften. You notice that change is not loss, it is rhythm. That rhythm makes room for growth, decay, rest, and return. The human journey fits inside that rhythm like one note inside a song. You do not need to cling to the note. Trust the song. See how everything you have learned maps onto the cycle. Neurons fire, then fall, silent. Trees grow, then give themselves to soil. Suns blaze, then seed the next generation of light. Consciousness may follow the same curve, flowering in a body, dissolving into a wider field. Gathering again in forms we cannot yet imagine. Accepting this does not make life smaller. It makes every moment larger because it is held inside a pattern too vast to fail. You are that pattern tasting itself in this fragile form. When you speak, the universe hears through you. When you wonder, the universe questions itself. And when you rest, the universe pauses in gratitude for its own reflection. Carry that thought into every breath. Let it guide choices. Let it soften judgments. Let it remind you that every mind you meet is another mirror of the same bright mystery. We have walked a long path together. You began with a single daring question. Where does the self go when the body sleeps forever? Along the way you touched electric storms in dying brains, stood in tombs where souls were weighed against feathers, watched modern machines record a last surge of light, and felt the quiet pull of something larger than any heartbeat. Now it is time to settle into stillness. Close your eyes if you can. Feel the faint hum beneath your ribs. Picture a night sky without city lights. Stars hang like quiet lanterns on an endless canvas. Each one is a cradle of future life. Somewhere out there, fresh atoms are cooling that will someday sit inside a thinker much like you. The cycle never ends. Let that calm you. Breathe in and feel the air arrive as a gift from unseen forests. Breathe out and send your warmth back to the world. With every breath, you practice the final letting go. It is gentle, it is natural, it is safe. Remember the man who heard a loving question in the silence after his heart stopped. Remember the woman who found peace when her lost voice smiled in a dream. Their stories hint that awareness may open into a softer light than any we know here. Imagine that light now. It is warm butter gold, filling the space behind your closed eyelids. Inside it there is no hurry. Memories drift like slow snow. Regret dissolves like salt in water. Only curiosity remains, steady and bright. If sleep begins to wrap around you, let it. Sleep is the nightly rehearsal for that larger release. If you are still awake, simply listen to the faint pulse in your ears and know that each beat is part of one vast cadence shared by every living heart. Imagine millions of travelers lying down across the planet at this very moment, each one held by gravity, rocked by breath, wondering about the same mystery. Feel how that thought softens the edges of loneliness. You are inside a quiet fellowship of minds, all drifting toward the next dawn. Before we close, allow one more reflection. Life gave you senses to taste its wonders, a brain to weave stories, and questions to keep you reaching. Whatever waits beyond the veil will honor those gifts. So meet it without fear. Meet it with the same awe you feel when a sunrise reddens clouds or a child laughs for the first time. In this calm space, whisper gratitude for every sight, sound, and touch you have known. Whisper thanks for every lesson in love and every lesson in loss. Then give yourself permission to rest. The story continues, but tonight you may pause on this page. Allow your thoughts to fade like fireflies at dawn. Let the warm dark cradle you. If sleep has not yet come, it soon will. And if you are already drifting, know that the universe is holding you, patient and kind, until morning opens another chapter of wonder. Good night, curious soul. Dream softly, live gently, and remember that the question you carry is shared by all who breathe. We will explore it again when the next evening calls.